So on my Instagram this week, I talked a little bit about how a narrower infrapubic angle or a narrow outlet of the pelvis and a wider inlet will lead to a more externally rotated femur. But in some people, the femur can orient relatively into more internal rotation. So what this looks like is somebody with a more valgus presentation at the knees often. So you might notice that on me, my knees look relatively straightforward. On some people, you're going to see more of a knock-knee presentation where the femurs start to sort of turn inward. So that's just one clue. The other thing you might notice is a big limitation in internal rotation. Here's why. If I measure somebody's hip internal rotation and they're already oriented into internal rotation, they're only going to have so much more left to go. So we often use things like block squeezes to facilitate the adductors to pull the infrapubic angle open. When we do that, that's a great strategy for changing the position of the pelvis. However, if we've already got more leverage into internal rotation at the femurs, we may need to facilitate a better contraction of the glutes while we facilitate this internal rotation. So we can use hip shifting type activities, but create a banded position or an abduction position of the femur so that we don't bias this even more into internal rotation. So I'm going to show you a few exercises in how you may be able to manipulate some common things like squats, split squats, hinges. If you have this presentation where your knees tend to turn in more, but you know that your pelvis is in a more wider inlet and narrow outlet. Okay, so let's start with a split squat. So what I want you to do is go straight down into the split squat. Make sure that you're keeping your body straight upright. In order to do this, if you need to, you can move your back leg forward so you can go straight down versus having to be in a bunch of hip extension on that back leg and then leaning forward. So we're going to start in that position and I'm going to shift my hip back. So as I shift my hip back, I'm getting that outlet of the pelvis to open up a little bit wider. But I don't necessarily want my knee to cave into abduction because I might promote more internal rotation of the femur. So what I'm going to do is go down and use the band to create a little bit of facilitation of the glutes in a lengthened position. So I'm lengthening my glute max and my posterior glute med in this position. I'm creating internal rotation of the pelvis, and I'm using abduction to really get those glutes to stabilize me. So you can just hold this position in an isometric, or you can practice going up and down dynamically, turning towards that leg to get your hip shift at the bottom. We can exhale there, facilitate more internal rotation. Inhale up. So give that one a try and let me know how it goes. Okay, so we can create the same adaptation in a squat by holding at that 90-degree angle, and that will promote more pelvis internal rotation or allowing the innominates to come in. And we can use a band around our knees to help those femurs stabilize and not allow for them to excessively go into IR. So I'm going to use some wedges. I'm going to drop down with my reach. I'm going to go to 90 degrees. In this position, the band is forcing me to hold my knees outward. So I want to stay up as upright as I can. I'm going to hold that position. The band is causing me not to squeeze in too much. I don't want to overly open. I want to keep contact with my feet. I can hold this as an isometric, or I can practice going down and up. I can inhale and then exhale as I squeeze it up. Inhale, exhale, squeeze it up. So I'm getting a nice contraction of the posterior glutes in a lengthened position. So I can use the same strategy in a hinge. Now, I can do this as a single leg, or I can grab the band again and do more of a bilateral hinge variation. But what I like about the single leg is I can hinge myself back and I can drop that opposite hip down. So now I'm internally rotating. I'm going to open up the backside of my pelvis, get a wider infrapubic angle there, and I'm going to facilitate a little bit of abduction to keep those glutes working hard while I'm allowing them to lengthen. So I can hold this position and breathe, or I can inhale down, exhale up. Inhale down, nice lengthen contraction, exhale up.